What we're going to talk about today is the history of fire learning and go back to the 1800s just to build a foundation of this because there really isn't much about this out on YouTube. There really, we're going to go basically from the firebox system forward on up to present day. Because it's very interesting to me. It's always been very interesting to me. And we're going to talk about minitors and all kinds of stuff. We're not going to go crazy. I'm not going to go over obscure brands or anything, although it will be mentioned for sake of continuity. Okay, so what we had back in the day when there was a fire in town, they hit a church bell or a horn or something, and everybody would come running down to the fire station. That's how they would alert. And for our context for this discussion, we're talking about volunteer firefighters, and a little bit of full-time firefighters too. Before they had pagers and before radios were a big thing, we're talking probably pre-World War II here on down to probably even the 1900s, even maybe the 1800s. We had these Gamewell fireboxes in most cities. And these Gamewell fireboxes like a low voltage, kind of like a telephone system. And they had a Morse code keyer so they could key codes. Like, do, 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 do. So what it would do is there's these boxes on the side of the road called fireboxes. People would pull this firebox, and it would have a wheel on it, like a geared wheel that have a number quote on it. So we'll say it's number 2. So that would come into the fire station, and it will tap out number 2. So that way they needed to go to box 2, which we'll say is in front of the town hall. Box 2 is in front of the town hall, and what they would do is they would run on the town. Everybody would go to the fire station, get the engine, and go to the town hall, and then there'd be a fire there. So these things always work. They're like their own low voltage thing. And what somebody could do is inside the Gamewell firebox, if you had the key to it, you could open it up and you could communicate back to the fire station. Using number codes. 1 could be, we're on scene. 2 could be fire, send more help. It was basically to the point. It wasn't like how it was today. And then inevitably, as fire alarm systems modernized in commercial buildings, they would tie their commercial fire alarm to the firebox, so ring in on that system. So it's a totally independent system, backed up by batteries and low voltage, and it's pretty unique. And that's a system that was used in a lot of cities and smaller towns. In rural areas, you had the fire horn, which also could have been linked to the Gamewell box. In Dudley, we had box 229, which wasn't really used, but it sat in front of the fire station. And what you could do is you could pull that box, and everybody rolled to the fire station. It has only been pulled, from my listening, one time. The fire department was out on a medical call, was out on chasing after thunderstorms, which dealing with fire alarm calls and all that. It's a smaller fire department. I'll put a picture of it. I got to make a list of my pictures and find all that. That's going to be an editing thing. So what it would do is some man was having a heart attack during the storm, so he pulled the box because nobody was at the fire station. It's back in the mid-'90s, early 2000s. Somebody showed up and they took care of him. Another time the box was pulled, I got to find the article, but it was in the early 2000s. There was a thunderstorm coming through. And this is a time when cell phones were around, but Dudley is notoriously bad for cell service. Even today it is, Dudley, Massachusetts. It's like, what the hell? I mean, nothing annoys me more when there's no real service in a commercial area. And some of these areas of Dudley, they're not that rural. I mean, they're really not. They're near main roads and stuff. I mean, compared to out here, where I'm in the middle of nowhere, I get 5G. So, anyhow, somebody's house was on fire and they pulled the box and the fire department arrived. A lot of these boxes, including Dudley and Webster, have been removed. They're no longer used because they're expensive to maintain. Cell phone coverage is better. Regional dispatch was the main reason for that, because they would have had to somehow route all that stuff in the regional dispatch. It would be very difficult. And a lot of false alarms of those boxes too, unfortunately. People would go around pulling them and ha he he. Or sometimes they have electrical issues and the box would get triggered. it was susceptible to lightning and other types of things in some situations. Another story about the box. This is my favorite box story. And they don't do this anymore. So Webster had the police station, which is now where the main fire station is. We'll put a picture of it. And when there was a fire alarm, as in somebody calls in the police station and says, hey, there's a house on fire, the police officer would actually at the police station would actually pull a box called 442, and it'll go 442, four alarm blows, another 4 alarm blows of the fire horn because it'll link to the fire horn. Then 2 other short that X amount of cycles, maybe 4 or 5. And this fire horn is some big ass honking air horn looking thing. So they pull that box, and everybody just come around the station. They physically pull the box in the station. They don't do that anymore. It's all regional dispatch. There's a crew there full time. Although, of course, they don't have to meet the minimum NFPA requirements, which I think is 2 engines and 1 ladder fully staffed. Webster Fire does not run the EMS. That all stopped now. No more fire horns in Dudley or Webster. I'm sure somebody has that in their basement, or it's the memorabilia inside the fire station or something. Anyhow, moving onward and forward, what else did we have for this type of stuff? We talked about all that. A lot of that stuff's gone now. Most towns have gotten rid of their game out system. Some towns in Massachusetts and New England, they don't pull a physical box, but they'll hit the tones and they'll say, box 442, recall, which means everybody has to report back to the station. Although, different, discrete radio terms and all that, especially up north, I give them credit for that. Things like 10 codes and other weird, obscure things have gone by the wayside. Then we have a telephone system. Now, there's a video I'm going to post in perpetuity, in its whole, that's not the right term. I have a video I'm going to post from a Maine fire department, a ring down system. Now, ring down systems are pretty neat. How they would alert people if there was a fire before regional dispatch. This whole video is really neat. So now we're going to go into history of fire pagers and fire services. Now, we're not going to so much talk about station alerting. Station alerting is more for full-time fire departments like Boston or whatever. I mean, you could take a pager like this. You could put it in a charging dock, wire a relay to it, and have lights and horns and sirens and all kinds of things go off. A lot of it, too, was with the tones, they would be set to a relay. And if those tones dropped, depending on how you had it set, you could have a siren trigger with a relay, a timed relay, which will go off after X amount of times. Or you can link your firebox to it like Webster and physically pull a box in the police station to make it go off. But a lot of times now they use DTMF for the fire horn. We still have a fire horn here. It's down by Station 37, and it does go off, but it's a very generic horn. It sounds like a truck air horn. I didn't realize it even had one until one day I was outside and the tones dropped. I heard this horn going off, and I'm like, why is some truck driver hitting the horn? But the horn isn't, the numbers don't mean anything. It's just a horn to alert you to go there. It's a traditional thing probably, and as this area gets built up, somebody will complain about it, and eventually it'll go away, well, too bad. Just like the people who complain who move to, So as I was editing the video, I realized I left out a huge part of how this stuff works. So for an analog pager, Plectron, Minitor 1 through, well, at least Minitor 2 through 7, Swiss phone, even the Unication technically, or even a portable radio if you want to look at it that way. I have different modes. These pages have different modes. Selective call frequency 1. This sits on the pager, on vibrate only, and it will record the call. It will not open the speaker. Personal setting that I have. All right, so you have, for our discussion of the pager, you have monitor mode. C1. This is like a scanner. Monitor mode will be a term we will use. Monitor means whatever comes across the frequency, it's what you're going to hear. Every traffic on the frequency, just like a police scanner. Then we have this mode here. Selective call frequency 1. Now, the radio remains silent until the tones go off. and then it'll open up the speaker, and then the tones will announce whatever announcement there is. So I have this set to 154.570, both of these, the icon and this radio here, and we're gonna tone out here. Now keep in mind, it's set to 154.570. It is not set to the local fire frequency before people start saying things. Here we go. Pager's sitting silent. You're watching football, whatever. Attention, attention. Test, test, test. This is only a test. Then it goes into stored voice mode. This is what stored voice is. It's a recorder, basically. That gives us a definition of what we need to do, of what I'm trying to explain here. And then you can reset it. You put, depending on your radio setup, set it. Attention, attention. Test, test, test. This is only a test. All right, for a stored voice portion of it, so the tone drops, right? So you're sitting at home. Pager's sitting there. It's not in scan mode. It is not in monitor mode. Now, scan mode means it alternates between two channels like a police scanner. Monitor mode means it stays on one channel like a police scanner would. You get all the traffic. You're staying home. Nobody's bothering you. You're staying home. And then all of a sudden, test only. Test, 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 test. Test only. Test, test. Test, test, test. Test only. Test, 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 test. Test only. Test, test. Test, test, test. Attention, attention. Test, test, test. This is only a test. And that's how it works with stored voice. Just a quick idea of this. Our concept is this. Speaker remains silent until those tones tell the radio to open up the squelch, and you will hear radio traffic on the frequency. Anyhow, what happened is, first the Plectron came along. The Plectron came out, I think, in the 50s, and it was a big lunchbox-looking thing. It had a battery in it, and it had, I think it had two settings. It had tones and no tones. So basically, the tones would drop, and it would, the tones either through different types of Motorola software or Plectron consoles, whatever, the tones would drop, and then your radio would open up. But these things were big. They're like lunch boxes. And they were pretty, people, they had batteries in them, so people would carry them around with them, around town and stuff. I think those are pretty neat. I want one for myself just to convert it to a weather radio. But the only Plectrons I can find are they're all low band that are left, and not that low band isn't useful, but it's a weird low band split, like 45 to 48 or 43 to 44 or something weird. So the Plectron was really interesting. It wasn't really portable, though. It was and it wasn't. For its time, it was pretty neat. Depending on how your town was set up, if you're an audible raise of that fire horn, I guess, but with sound, things go away quicker, and if you're sleeping or something, you're not going to hear it as easily, especially inside of a house. I mean, you don't want to make people go deaf. I mean, the fire horn has limitations on how far you can hear it. But anyhow, the Minitor 1 came along, I think in the 70s. Pretty big and bulky. Now, so you have the Minitor 1, which came out. It was kind of bulky, like a small walkie-talkie. It had basically, I think, just alert and open. That's it. I don't know if it had scan or not. I don't think it did. I'll do some more research on it. I'll put yes or no scan on it. These, I've seen one in the wild. It was the 90s. I was at Kmart in Webster. Yes, Kmart. I was about 8 years old. And this guy came into Kmart in front of me in line. He had a big, on his belt, like right on his pants. I mean, this thing was probably, closer to like two of these, more so on the size of a small walkie-talkie, and it said Charlton Fire on it. And Charlton Fire was low band until recently. Those I didn't see much of them. I once I started noticing, I started seeing a lot of Minitor 2s. Now, Minitor 2s. Now, all these are crystal controlled too, by the way, of reads, and no computers involved whatsoever. The Minitor 2 came out. A lot of people like the Minitor 2. They say it has good, but so many modifications you can do to it, all this stuff. But there's a problem with the Minitor 2. It's not wideband capable, number one. Number two, it's crystallized and you need the reads. And number three, this isn't like a police scanner, crystal scanner where you just drop in the crystal. You have to have a scope to adjust it appropriately somehow. Now, I've heard stories of people taking the crystals out. Let's say it's 154.250 megahertz. And you want to go on 154.235 megahertz. That's your fire department frequency. You would probably be all right, but you got to keep in mind there's very little support for these anymore. And the crystal you got to solder and pull out. Desolder it and pull out. If you're not careful, you're going to ruin the whole board. Some of these had scans, some of these didn't. Some of them even had stored voice. My interactions with these, we had a kid. He's not a kid anymore. He's on the fire department. He's a good guy, too. I don't know him personally, but I've run into him before. He has an old fire truck. Anyhow, long story short, Dudley had these. They had 2 channels. I think they had scan mode in these, I think. Or maybe he modified his, because he's one of those kind of guys. One was Dudley Fire, one was Dudley Police. Man, 2 frequencies is all you need. Analog. Have it in scan mode, you can monitor both. Or with Dudley Fire, you can leave it open all day because it's a small fire department. You don't have to have it shut off all day. But anyhow, some of these had stored voice, some didn't. Would I buy one of these today? No. Unless you're really into vintage stuff, absolutely not. But they were the best of its time till wideband came along. And then it should be narrowband. And then you get these whacked out frequencies too some of these departments use. I can't think of, like Oxford Fire, 154.0325, whacked out narrowband frequency. It's going to be off frequency. And what are you going to get? A crystal for a 154.030? I mean, come on. So anyhow, now we have the Minitor 3 coming out. I remember when the Minitor 3 came out. We had a guy who was on the fire department over in Quinnebog. And low band pager, 33.8 megahertz. I think 1 channel, because that's all I really need. Those were the first computerized, programmable ones. But they had their own sets of problems with those. They are not narrowband capable. And if you do find a Minitor 3, you have to they have issues with learning and issues with their soldering boards and all these things going on. And if you find a Minitor 3, they're almost the cost of the Minitor 5. Now, from my understanding, Unication, or subsidiaries of thereof, made all the pages for Motorola, at least from the Minitor 2 forward. So you see some Unication similarities in them if you work with them or play around with them. The Minitor 4. The Minitor 4 had the same issues, from my understanding. And I don't think the Minitor 4 is narrowband capable. And given the price of these pagers, for $10, $20 more, you get a Minitor 5. None of these are digital capable, by the way. They're all analog. Then you got the Minitor 2, which you gotta be careful. 3, 4. The 3 and 4 I would not recommend, because by the time the price of them, you could easily get one of these. Now we segue into the Minitor 5. So it took them 2 times to get this right. The Minitor 5 is narrowband capable. The Minitor 5 has ability to have 2 channels. It has stored voice, optional. It has all the features that you're used to. A word of noting, though, when you program a Minitor 5 pager, it's called probability scan. That's what makes it scan between channels. Silent scan means it's scanning between tones, between two channels, which I don't recommend doing. If you have two sets, anyhow, this pager here has some issues with it. The issues are typical issues. You're dealing with an analog pager, so depending on your signal in the area of your department, it may have some issues with signal dropout. I managed to cook this pager. Yeah, I cooked the fucking thing. Yep, I'm just going to say the F word. I don't care. I said to myself, I should update the firmware on this. So I took a wire and I ran 5 volts across the board, and I hold the wires. I will show you. The wires, and I hold them like this, like that, like this. And I should have made some type of crude, like out of a soda bottle or a Tupperware stand for it or something. But these are no longer supported by Motorola, by the way. I'm sure you can find some guy to fix that at $100 an hour. I found a guy online that'll fix it for me, possibly. But you might as well just buy another one. These are cheap and plentiful on the used market right now. Problem though. This particular one I never fixed. For some reason, it sounded way out of tune, way off frequency, even though I programmed it. What I should have done is access engineering mode in the pager and try to adjust it somehow. Or round off my frequency. But my frequency is 154.160 megahertz. I mean, it's not like it's 154.18752659 or something weird. The reason why I got this because, it's what I call another toilet purchase. You're at work or you're at home. Oh, look at this. Click, click, bang. Look, I got this. The initial issues I had with this. First of all, the batteries they gave me, even though they're new, are dead. They're no good. They're very swollen. I recommend you also get a small tool like this. Very, very good. Instead of taking a big-ass flathead screwdriver and just, prying at things and breaking them. So these batteries are swollen. It still works. It still will open up and hold a charge. Word of the wise when working with these is number one. Just go on a reputable website like Helloid Radio. I cannot recommend them any better. I love them. You're going to spend a little more, maybe $50, $20, $30 more, but your accessories will be right there. Okay? You can easily they warranty their stuff. They bench test their stuff before they sell it. And I think they might have an eBay page possibly where they sell their old junk that nobody wants. But this was off frequency for some reason. I don't know if I could have fixed it. But now I have a usable case and I have a belt clip and maybe I'll get another one. I don't think so though. Because I don't want to invest any more money in the analog stuff. And this Unication pager here is very similar in operation. Oh, these are intrinsically safe. The build quality on this is much better than this would be. This is almost more like, it's a little better than like a regular pager. But they're very similar. I got this for like $25 for somebody who didn't know any better on eBay. So I really lucked out on this one. And what's good is the AA batteries. You can just drop in the batteries. Anyhow, moving onward and forward. We'll talk about programming these. The software is available for free. You can find it anywhere from the Motorola. Same thing for the Apollo if you find one. You have to get this thing. The biggest problems I have is with stored voice. I'm trying to get things to work in stored voice appropriately, and it's hard because, as I said earlier, dispatchers, they key up. They key up a certain way, and it drops it, and the page is like, okay, message over, and just deletes it. So another thing we're going to talk about shortly is POSCAG paging or flex paging. Now, these are the old school pagers that we all grew up with. The alphanumeric stuff. Connecticut, Tolan County, and Windham County have a system like this, and I think it's great because those pagers, they're cheap, they're readily available. You drop a AA battery or AAA battery in there, it lasts for a week. What they do is they have a paging system, and it pages the calls to them. The only thing about these, though, is that you can buy a Unication pager or whatever brand, and you can program them. I don't know about the frequency. I gotta research that more. You can program the cap codes, basically of the tones, for your department and your area. And it's just so nice to easily carry one with you. However, this information, unless you sit, we're not going to talk about that, but this information isn't really public, so you're not going to, there's different videos on that. I'm not going to talk about that, but it's really nice. I think it's really nice. And it's just a VHF frequency on the hill, blasting out pager crap all day. 1520075. There's no voice on it. All you're going to hear is pager, data tones. You're not going to hear anything useful, like digital noise. And it's just easy. And it's real. I'm surprised more departments haven't embraced this technology because it's cheap. But it requires some knowledge about paging systems to maintain this. And I also have an option to carry a low band pager too, which I think they're phasing out low band in Tolan. Tolan County is already phased it out. I think Windham County is trying QVSECC is going to be phasing it out. I hope they somehow keep an analog patch somehow, maybe. You can hear the announcements on the analog UHF channels, which is nice, because low band's a pain to deal with as far as listening to scanners and stuff. It really is. And their signal isn't as powerful as it once was. Of course, though, when I used to listen to QV low band back in the 90s, we didn't have Wi-Fi. We didn't have all this dirty power running in the house. And any of you ham radio people that do HF know what I'm talking about. So a lot less interference-prone world back in the 90s. So maybe I'm just not hearing it as well as I used to. Now we're going to talk about P25 paging, which there's different ways of P25 paging. We'll bring Unication into it for the purpose of the discussion. I think P25 paging is really cool. If I do tones over P25, it is really neat. However, I have some problems with their pagers, though, of course, the durability of them. An honorable mention is the analog Unication G1 pager. I wanted to play around with one of those, but that wasn't possible because they're too expensive for what they are. But so anyhow, this thing is awesome. I really like this. So you can set this on priority, and when it talks, you can be listening to, I don't know, let's think of something here. Let's pretend that the bus company, the buses that drive around the city, use a trunk system. And you want to listen to the buses because, I don't know, you're in the buses for some reason. And that talk group and channel is nonstop. You have another channel in priority mode for your tones, for your department. As soon as somebody keys a microphone, boom, it's on that priority channel. It's not like the old priority where it's like click, 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 just rapidly switching faster between channels like you would hear on something like you get a lot of click, 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 clacking when you run a radio in TDR mode. I could do an example on that, but you know what I mean. We run an old scanner in priority where you hear that blinking light, and it's basically stopping. It's basically trying to rapidly scan within 1 second between both channels, hoping to catch something. This is really good for that. Now, I run the tones over analog. Excuse me. I run the tones over the digital talk group. That's how I operate this. There's also a P25-based paging solution. I don't know much about it, but it's similar to tones. Supposedly, it hits it a certain way. But I've never had any missed tones with this at all. I think it's due to the reception of the Andrew megahertz system down here, which is not as interference prone as VHF is. And our coverage down here is amazing. There's not many hills, not many valleys. There's not many stuff going on here like there is in the Northeast. But I've never missed tones on this. I've had some false tone alerting on here, though, because with Unication, you can only enter a range of tones. So some Muppet who programmed the radio, they have, I'm going to make this up. they have tone 1200 slash 150 as their tone for their fire department. And then some idiot says, well, I'm going to do 1210 slash 130, 180 for my tone or something. It won't differentiate. You'll get alerts for both departments. So I've had that issue with some of the departments. Most notably, a couple stations around here that aren't in my area. But I set this up to monitor. I set up so I can sit around the house and just not listen to dispatch all day because it gets repetitive, and they love to talk down here. Which is nothing wrong with it, but it gets repetitive and tiring. Plus, this county is big. There's some areas where the mutual aid will be equivalent, like Dudley Fire responding to Leominster or something. I mean, I'm sure they have before in the past, but it's not a routine thing. It's just so far away that's not going to affect anything here. It's a fairly large geographic county compared to, say, Rowan County. What I have in here is I have station 37, 91, and 39. Now, problems with this. I had to send a pager back because it just wouldn't work. The problem I have with this, it just does whacked out stuff sometimes. The most recent problem I have now is durability. This pager I carried with myself off and on for maybe 2 or 3 years. Mostly I lived in Salisbury because I wanted to hear the fire department stuff. The rubber's worn out, all this stuff going on here. And I'm not a firefighter or EMT. I just put this on my belt. This is regular wear and tear. I'm not bringing this to fire scenes and putting water in it. This is the biggest problem now. And the warranty ran out too. I cannot find an extended warranty on this to buy one or purchase one. I don't think it's even an option. I'm sure if I was a communications director, I bought 300 pages, I'm sure they'd take care of me. But I'm not a communications director. So, and there's no user serviceable parts. So now, I can't switch freaking zones. The freaking joystick doesn't work. Real nice. So, doesn't freaking work. I banged on this. I did everything. I even took off this here because the warranty's inactive. This joystick doesn't do anything, which tells me that this here is not soldered to the board or it's broken. Now, you click it and it does stuff, but it doesn't beep, it doesn't move, it doesn't do anything. And for some reason, of course, I can only get it to go up, but I can't go down. So since I can't go down, I can't get below here. So what I had to do is I went in with the laptop, and this software is free and user programmable, and I just put all the area channels I would need for what I'm doing if I go somewhere. But the problem with this is it's out of warranty. So I gotta send it out somewhere at a few $100s probably just to get it fixed. Now, the only thing you could get from Unication are the knobs and the battery, the belt clip, and the cover. Would I buy this again? No. I would only buy this. I only carry it as an issued pager, and I don't like these things at all. I mean, the durability of it and the hardware is the problem with it. They've gotten better firmware updates and all that, but for $600 friggin' dollars, I shouldn't have to deal with this stuff failing. I don't change zone to do stuff that often with it either. I'm not, sitting here, monitoring this all day. Usually it stays on the same channel and same group all day. I'm probably just going to leave this as is and not doing anything with it. I probably would get, if you work for a department, you're going to have an issued radio. So I would just use that. A lot of the firefighters too, they just carried an issued Motorola P25 radio, which has its own built-in tone capability, probably some stored voice too, and they just do that. But the durability, the hardware issues with these makes me really annoyed. And this is the pager that every Davidson County or Rescue Squad member gets. And, so I personally don't like these. And if I was on the fire department, I'd just get something like this. And the thing about the county is it doesn't have many tones. A lot of these departments only have one set of tones. It's all call. That's it. So which is kind of a good thing, I guess. Swiss phone pagers. I don't know much about those, but if I were to get any type of pager, I would get something like this. Now, there's another option for paging, which is more on the radio nerd side, but it ties up your whole radio. The convenience of these, I can put this on my belt and walk around, and I know if it's a fire call. I know, like, listen to my scanners. Because it's so much easier than listening to dispatch all day, let me tell you. After the Motorola pagers, we had the Motorola Minitor 6 and Minitor 7. The Minitor 6, basically is a much more modern type pager. It has user friendly software. It uses a USB plug similar to your phone to plug into the computer, and if you have to, you can use that cable to charge the radio if you don't have a drop-in charger available. It has five different frequencies and 5 different alert modes. And as I said earlier with the video when I showed this, it's not necessarily channels. It's the alert modes that you want. However, it's not necessarily having 5 channels.
Selected call.
It's 5 different modes you can have with 5 different frequencies. However, these to me are more of an alert system. Something to carry with you instead of carrying a portable or listening to dispatch all day of a cheap scanner. So realistically, I hate to say it, I mean, all you really need is one channel for alerting. What makes these pagers count are the different modes, vibrate, silent, stored voice, tones, where the tones will go off, like I showed earlier. Then, of course, monitor mode, where you hear everything on the frequency. I'll put a diagram about the difference between the 5 and the 6. Supposedly, the 6 and the 7 aren't that much different. The 7 just has updated firmware, updated features, but they're mostly the same pager. A couple other things I want to go over real quickly. Phone apps. There's apps called I Am Responding or other similar apps that supplement the firefighter's pager and or walkie-talkie if they're off duty carrying that. The advantages of that, you got a lot of modern features. You can see who's responding by location, various different features in those for tracking purposes, much more modern. However, if a cell phone network, those in my opinion are supplemental to a pager or a radio. Two-way radio. If the cell phone network gets overcrowded due to either physical outages due to disaster or the power's out and everybody's killing their tablets on the 5G network, slowing it down, the network becomes throttled, you could miss an alert. But that's another option you could use too, that some departments issue, that software to help. I still believe in the old school pagers, especially the analog ones. I switched those a better option than Unication, which basically is Motorola. Has been for, as I said earlier, for quite a few years. This video has gotten long enough. I hope I offered some insight into this. It really became a lot more complicated than I wanted it to be. And either this video is going to get a ton of views and a ton of questions, or it's going to just get like 10 views and that's the end of it. So, anyhow, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Any questions, just let me know. A lot of this stuff, though, at the end of the day, if it's going to be equipment that's issued to you. This is more geared towards the casual scanner monitor who doesn't want to hear fire dispatch all day, or the volunteer firefighter or junior firefighter of some point of that type. My favorite pager overall, I really have to say, is anything analog like this. When I could just running it with the tones open, it's probably my favorite because it gets your attention. Vibrate also is nice, but I'd rather run the tones open, and because everybody has a cell phone now, so it's not going to scare anybody. But when I'm at work or at church or something, I run on this mode here. That's about it. Thank you for watching. There will be a follow-up video on making cables for these radios. However, that radio is going to be a separate video, and it's going to be an at-your-own-risk video.